Guys, today's podcast is slightly different to the ones that you've heard before from us in tone. We're very privileged to be able to serve and drink some of the best coffees in the world when we work at cafes and roasteries. But often there are untold hardships that we don't hear about in coffee and for the stakeholders around it. In this podcast, Daniel opened our eyes to some things that we had never really thought about before and gave us a good opportunity to reflect on our role in the industry and in some respects, just how easy we have it. Daniel's story is quite incredible, and we'd like to say a special thank you to him for being so open and sharing his story and the producers' stories from Ethiopia. This podcast contains stories of war, loss, grief, and just how hard it is to get coffee to us from Ethiopia. We came away with it with a different perspective after this chat, and we're very sure that you'll feel the same way. Enjoy.
Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
Welcome back to the It's Just Coffee podcast. I'm Kirk Pearson.
And I'm Rohan Cook.
And it's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
Wait, that's terrible. Let's do it again one more time. 3, 2, 1.
It's just coffee. Sorry,
there it was.
We had to get that right. And we've got a very special guest today. I'm going to let you introduce this one.
Absolutely. We've got Daniel Seyoum. Now, Daniel has coffee farms in Ethiopia. He imports green beans, has amazing cafes in Melbourne. And not only that, he gives back to the community. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to have you in.
It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for having me.
We just had some supreme off-air banter before we get in. Every week, I like to think we have an official warm-up ceremony, and well, not really, but we were having some really great jokes.
We were having some great jokes.
Let's just say that. But yeah, good to have you on. Sounds like you got a fair bit going on, Daniel.
Yeah, it's been an exciting couple of years. Yeah.
So you're operating. Will we get to that part now, Rohan? Introduce what he's doing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We've got a couple of farms on the go in Ethiopia. So are you back and forth from Ethiopia?
I actually haven't been back since 2019. We've taken a different journey since we've been back. Just COVID happened, a few things. I'm sure you're aware of the war that took place.
And we'll get more on that later as well, for sure.
Yeah, but I haven't been back yet.
And so I understand you've got a few cafes you're doing now. So Ageyo is one, and Little Ezida.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the aim of these cafes?
Little Ezida is a nice local. That's we started off at a bike shop. Just a friend of mine who's a chef. He's been in the industry for 15 plus years, and he was out of job during COVID. We collaborated, and it's a cafe, breakfast, lunch, and also licensed.
Yeah, awesome. And at Ageyo, what's the premise there?
Ageyo's more, the aim is to showcase a little bit of our culture and share what we love about Ethiopia and our story.
And Ageyo is the name of
the village where I was born, and my parents grow coffee.
There you go.
Southwest of Ethiopia.
Well, I was about to ask you what gets you going in the morning. It sounds like coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Farming coffee, brewing coffee, cafe. And it's interesting to have you here because it's kind of like you're one of the few people that have done it all in the industry. So the coffee, like sort of farming, exporting, selling to people, roasting, and now brewing at the very end of it. Like you've done all of it.
Yep.
And so how old are you now?
Old. I'm 40 this year.
Jeez, okay.
You're a glowing beacon of youth.
It's a coffee.
You look beautiful. You're gorgeous.
Well, what I'm curious to know with all
me sitting on him,
all those years of coffee experience. What coffee do you drink usually every morning?
Oh, I love this question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is going to be an extra great answer.
It really depends on the morning, on the day, but mostly double espresso.
Double espresso.
Yeah.
Now, you got 4 kids, so you need that double espresso to get you up, right? That's what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, putting in work. But Excellent to have you on. So excited to learn a bit more about Ethiopian coffee. We always start the podcast with a bit of news. So we got some spicy news to come. You ready for me to get into that, Rohan?
Yeah, let's do some coffee news.
Okay, it's time for the coffee news. Coffee apparently will lower the risk of bowel cancer. Now, you will love this one. Patients who had at least 5 cups a day were 32% less likely than those who drank fewer than 2 cups a day to see their bowel cancer return, according to the paper, which was funded by the World Cancer Research Fund and has been published in the International Journal of Cancer. Now, it says the word return there. So does this mean if you've had it and you drink that much coffee, you're in better thoughts? Or?
I think from the article it was going to lower it, but also people that have had it before and removed are having less chance. So this is some great news for me. 5 cups a day. And finally, I'm getting some good news that my overconsumption of coffee is doing good for my body.
It doesn't do great things for the anxiety. I'm going through this, or for the sleep when you drink as much coffee as we do.
I'm so anxious about getting bowel cancer now that it's hardly worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean... Someone says, "Oh, you drink too much coffee." I'm like, "I do it for the preventative risks of bowel cancer." So, but hey, that's great news. Anything that lowers the risk, I'm all for.
And then in more important news than that, like not that you get any more important than bowel cancer, but in more important news, Sydney Sweeney has just come out and said she's never had coffee before. And she barely sleeps. She only needs 2 hours a night. She's a witch.
Is that how she does it?
Yeah.
Well, hang on. She sleeps 2 hours a night.
She was saying that she only needs 2 hours of sleep a night.
Okay.
Wow.
Because that's like a wonderful concoction of how to look that good. I mean,
she just says I drink water and have some fruit bowls was kind of her answer.
Well, apparently she likes croissants, bacon, and berries.
Wow.
Are her main staples for breakfast.
Well, apparently she's never drunk coffee before and she's never done an acting lesson because I just watched Anyone But You and that was shocking. That was an absolute shocker. I had like some friends, my partner wanted to watch and I had some friends being like, no, for a rom-com, it's actually really good. Worst script, worst performances. And I want to see him in Australia. I wanted to see Australia represented in a beautiful way. Terrible. And I won't take anything away from Sweeney because Euphoria, amazing. She is great. But that movie was a big pile of stink.
How you going? Look, I will say, let's give June a mention here. I went and saw June 2. Have you seen June 2
I
yet?
have not seen June 2. I'm waiting for I'm going with Seyoum when we get a day off, hitting the IMAX, doing it right.
Oh, man. It's the best movie I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, we brought it up last week and the person or the week before, Buck was just like, I don't like sci-fi. We were like, all right, well, next conversation.
Have you seen it?
No, not yet.
Not yet. All right, we'll get there. We'll get there.
You can come with Seyoum and I.
Yeah,
that's some hot news about Sydney. I mean, I thought she'd be on the coffees there, but
yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I thought she was. Hopefully, that's why she didn't visit your cafe when she was here filming.
Oh, bit ordinary Sydney, but anyhow, bit how you going? I thought we were on better terms than that, but apparently not. Okay, off to whatever else you're doing now. Daniel, talk us through your journey. So you've come from Ethiopia. You've gone back and forth between there and Melbourne intermittently, obviously before 2019. What's your family's relationship like with coffee? I know we just explained that your family are producers, but take us into detail with what that's like and growing up around coffee.
Oh, my father's the first one out of his family. For generations, they've been farmers, but he was the first one to plant coffee from his family because they originally from the north, from Tigray, and he moved down to southwest of Ethiopia in his early 20s. And it was kind of, I think, him moving down, it was to pull himself out from farming and become a merchant. So the first year he was buying from growers, selling it, and then somewhat, I think, farming was in him. So after a year, he said he decided to plant coffee, and it's 52 years gone by.
Now, I think we should sort of give this a bit of a pretext or a preamble about Ethiopian coffee for the listeners that are just joining in for the first time or just started along this journey with us. Ethiopia is the birthplace of all coffee. If you think Panamanian coffee, you think Colombian coffee, you think Burundi coffee, it all came from Ethiopia originally. Can you tell us, do you know the goat story, the legendary goat story? Is that...
Kaldi,
Yeah, can we explain that?
Well, it said that Kaldi, who's was looking after the goats, and as you all know, the goats were eating this leaf, and they were just hypo, jumping around, and thought, okay, if the leaf can do this to the goats, what the fruit would be like. So he picked the fruit, took it back to his village, and been drinking it since.
Apparently that's how they discovered magic mushrooms as well. They saw the sheep just looking up into the sky dazed. And he was like, well, if they're doing that to the sheep, then I want some of that as well.
So the sheep are eating the coffee cherries.
Yeah.
They're getting energized.
Not
goats
even
rather.
the cherry. Yeah, the leaf.
The leaf.
Yeah, okay. And goats are like a more sophisticated sheep, really. Have you ever cared for goats?
Yeah.
And sheep?
I have.
But you
growing up,
notice how sheep are like slightly more stupid?
Yeah.
Actually, a lot more stupid. Goats are much more
Super
independent creatures.
intelligent.
Yeah.
And I was just at a coffee farm, and they were saying that the caffeine is like a natural deterrent for certain like bugs and that to try to like actually stop the plant. It's just like the plant naturally defending itself.
Yeah, okay.
Why the caffeine is there.
Interesting.
Against like bugs or whatever. Obviously not goats.
Yeah.
Goats were into it.
Yeah, all right. So, and I guess that's it kind of segues into the question that we were going to ask next, is that Ethiopia has such a special important place to most baristas' heart, really, because it really is the origin of everything that we do. I think my understanding of it was that some was shipped off to sort of Yemen next and then exported through Northern Africa in some of those places. And so that whole region is really where it all began.
Yeah, absolutely. Ethiopia, before it was Ethiopia, I mean, it's been named a couple of things, but during this time, which was the Aksum Kingdom, and it was a huge empire, quite powerful, and controlled a lot of East Africa all the way to Yemen. They ruled, and they controlled a lot of the trade between Europe to Asia to India. Even though the Yemenis traded it to Turkey and Europe, but a lot of the trade was done by Ethiopians as well.
Yeah, right.
Right. Because there's also some arguments about where it came from, and some people even want to claim Yemen, but Ethiopia, that's where it had to start. That's where it all came from.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't see how you can win that argument. Trace it back to Kaffa, the oldest region where coffee was discovered, and I mean, we are within that region.
Now, also, I was lucky enough on the Golden Brown channel, we just had you in and we did a traditional Ethiopian coffee ceremony, which was unbelievable. I was so honored to be a part of it, go through the full process. Can you quickly run us through the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, what the process is, what it means to the family? Because it's also a big community thing, right? It's all about bringing the community together and that.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way, in the modern time, that's what we see, people having coffee over conversation, whether it's meeting or family. And this is what we do every day in the morning. The first thing you wake up and grab green beans, throw it on a pan, and, a kid will be sent around to go knock on neighbors' doors, and you invite your neighbors, and then randoms would walk in, literally. So it's kind of open house for anyone that's around, and you roast fresh beans, grind them, and everyone would sit around while the household, the female from the household is roasting the coffee, and have conversation. It could be about your days, your life, what's happening, politics. There's a lot of discussion. And I think the most important part of the whole ceremony is the roasting, and everyone just enjoying the aroma. And yeah,
it was beautiful. It was so amazing to be a part of, to watch it kind of, starting from the raw product, or not raw-ish, it's gone through a lot of processing, but raw in the sense of green, then having it roasted, having those aromas, feeling like, you're kind of part of it. And then it's also served out of this beautiful jug. What's that called again?
Jabana.
Yeah,
and Jabana is made out of clay, and we've been using this brewing method, I think, since time began for us, since we started brewing coffee, and it's still widely used in Ethiopia and the villages or towns.
So cool.
You know what? Hearing all these anecdotes or stories and anecdotes makes me feel sad about. It's like you're talking about, having the coffee and gathering around and talking to people about your day. Now the modern family in Australia probably, puts Married at First Sight on and, has the TikTok on the lounge room. It sounds beautiful. And, it sounds like there's a very traditional element to it that, has been maintained to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing's changed really.
Do you embrace this while still here in Australia? Like, do you do this with your family?
Yeah, not on an everyday basis. There probably families that do it every day, but we usually do it on a Sunday or when we have guests over, and it's an honor, a sign of respect to do it. So even if you have roasted coffee, you never use that. You always have to roast fresh coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would also say that here in Australia, there's so much talk about like fair trade and how people are treated and all this kind of stuff. And we get told stuff and I think we want to believe like whatever it is that we want to believe or that we think we're doing the right thing. But as someone that's on the farms, that's been there, that's seen it happen, can you pull back the curtain a little bit about the farming process, about the impacts it has on the communities, about what it's like actually farming this product and getting it out all over the world?
I'll start with like small scale farmers like my father. Growing I grew up on a farm, but going back as an adult, understanding this side of the business and hospitality, and then going back in 2016 and how much work is involved on the farm day to day. It's throughout the day, throughout the year, there's no break. So even post-harvest, you're going through the processes, and then there's turning soil, and then, as soon as rain start, you're weeding. So everything's done manually, as you know, and organically. There's no spraying. So it's a lot of work, but still to this day, there's a lot of conversation, like you said, about fair trade, direct trade. In Ethiopia, that wasn't happening until recent time, and still it's a long way. I think it was about 5 years ago, like small holding farmers could have a permit to trade if you've got more than 2.5 hectares of farm. You can trade directly with an export your coffee. That sounds great, but those farmers are typical farmers. They don't know what process is involved. It's a lot of process. You're taking it to capital, getting it sorted. So there's logistic expense, which is huge, and then getting it processed, and then finding a buyer, connecting with the outside world. So it's almost impossible. And I know there's a lot of people promoting themselves, whether small scale or big, where we are in Melbourne, directly purchasing. And they are happening, but these are transactions that are happening with big holders and this is being brutal and honest. And these are companies or families that have robbed families, small growers, for the last 30 years plus. And they've built those companies, and they've never owned a farm. And they've always bought coffee at the possible cheapest price. And they've got credential, they've got visibility, they've got all the facility. And in the last probably 10, 15 years, maybe more so 10, we've seen all those families going and buying land, planting, because it's important to have your own farm, and it gives you more, because that's where we are on this side, and buying it from the growers. But what they do is they have that as a how do I put it? Kind of to to sell the picture, they are growers, but they sort of source from, if you look at washing station and you're checking 800 farmers contribute to that washing station. And washing station is probably one of the worst thing to happen for growers, for small growers, because it's such a short period where you don't have time to negotiate. They picked on the day and sold it on the day for that price that you're given.
Right, so there's no power kind of thing from the growers in that moment.
Yeah,
they just have to take what they can.
Yeah. Whereas if you're doing natural, you can hold on to your beans, store it, and wait until price peak, and you probably make a little bit more money.
Wow.
So what's the incentive for someone to get to produce a wash flavour coffee? Just demand from consumers, or?
It's more demand from this side, from roasters. I mean, growing up, I remember there were hardly any washing station where I grew up in Jimma. But now, like, I remember just before we migrated to Melbourne, a few stations were sort of around. Now, when I went back, there's almost washing station every 5K.
I saw a lot of anger or like emotion in you when you said the word robbed before from companies. And I mean, you don't have to get too into it if you don't want to, but I thought that's a strong point to sort of bring up. So do you think there's certain, you sort of said there was companies that are quite big now and they built themselves perhaps off the back of, perhaps paying far too little for coffee that they were buying, and that enabled them to be big. You're living in Australia now and you're living in Ethiopia then. I'm just kind of thinking there must be quite a contrast in your mind of growing up and living there and then now living here and sort of seeing that through both prisms. So explain that to us if in as much as you're comfortable with.
Growing up in Melbourne and then going into the hospitality industry and seeing a lot of conversation about, again, going back to direct trade. And those things were visible in Melbourne when that hasn't existed, specifically in Ethiopia, where there was no direct trade and a lot of it was traded through the exchange. And then, just before I moved back to Ethiopia, seeing a lot of roasteries popping up in Melbourne, and they were sourcing directly, and generally excited and moving back to Ethiopia. And I felt like, my wife and I felt like we can really impact growers' life, people's life, and not just impact individuals, but on a community level where you can really promote and help them with structure, having the right facility and buying it directly and then sourcing it and selling it direct. And so we moved back in 2016 and, it was a huge transition, not only just moving to Ethiopia, but we were moving to the middle of nowhere in a village where you don't even have a running water with a 6-month boy. So it took us a while to adjust. And then once we got our permit for the farm, and I think it was 2018 harvest, and we had about 8-ton coffee. Prior to that, in 2017, we came back to Melbourne, had a conversation and went around Melbourne, visited a few roasteries and tell our story, and had conversation about natural versus, washing, and how those things impact community and the environment. And we went back and with a lot of energy, excitement. And so once we harvested 2018, trying to find a buyer was, to our surprise, really difficult. A lot of roasteries we contacted never got back to us, and I think reality kicked in, and it was quite sad to witness it from that side. And yeah, it was a difficult time. in a way, because there was a lot of unrest in Ethiopia as well, and then questioning what we were doing. But we pushed through, and then, skip 2018, 2019, things got worse in Ethiopia, and then and concluded we couldn't do it from that end. We had to come back to Melbourne, set up a business and import it ourselves and sort of try to sell it here, because we realized a lot of it was convenience. Some of the one that genuinely wanted to purchase didn't want to deal with the logistics side of it. They want someone that's based here. So yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Absolutely. I was going to jump in and say, you were talking about the washing process. Now, we kind of talked about this off camera, and we were talking that.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Obviously, I feel like there's a thing generally in the coffee world when people look at like a washed coffee, that's kind of like the purest form, right? Like that's going to be like the clarity and all that kind of stuff. And naturals when it gets a bit more like funky and a bit more like wild, for lack of a better word. But the washing, what kind of impact does that have that we're not looking as an outsider of? Because I know you were saying there's a huge impact on the local community.
Yeah. So washing stations set up right next to a river to just get close to the water. So picking starts around October, depending where you are. And that's when it starts to really heat up. And typically the washing stations operate, they would dig up a dam where the runoff goes into. And so nothing's done according to the rules. So the runoff will start building after a couple of days. With the heat, will start to ferment. And I mean, you can smell it from miles away. It stinks. And a lot of people get sick and, heavy cough, all those things. And our farm is right, one of our site, like it's right behind our house. And there's a river in the middle of our farm. And that runs from the north side, and probably about 1.5K away from us is a washing station. And I witnessed it the first time in 2017 during harvest. We just couldn't pick because it was that strong. And pickers refused to come and pick that site just because you just can't handle the smell. And the washing stations would release it back into the river overnight.
Oh, no.
So it's charcoal dark. So people can't use it for washing because a lot of the villages would use the running water for washing your livestock, your cows, or the wild animal drink this water. So it's unusable almost for about 2 months.
Wow, so a long time.
Yeah, and it's not only that river will go into another river. It affects, miles away. A lot of community are affected by it. And unfortunately, when you live in a village that's a small population, you can't go into the authority, and they are aware of it, but they just let it happen.
I guess we're not suggesting here that all washed coffee is bad from Ethiopia. Essentially, there's like irresponsible washing stations that release that that water into water catchments and things like that.
Yeah, right on. I'm not saying the process bad. It's the way we disposing
That's something I never would have thought of before until you had said it. And I think you actually said it last week when you were here as well. And I thought to myself, it really stuck with me. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Because the only thing I've ever thought about with washed or non-washed is like, hey, if you're in a country where there's not access to a lot of water, do it natural. And like, you know, we don't want to use all the water from the local communities and all that kind of stuff. But I've never thought about it running back into the water, about it fermenting, about ruining it for people to be able to use. So it is just something that sat completely out of my eyesight.
I've been to a washing station in South America before, and it has that really funky, quite pungent, bad smell of the fermenting of the sort of runoff into the water.
Yeah, and imagine, imagine leaving in that village and you're smelling it day and night, and you can smell it from home.
That sounds a bit how you're going. But I guess one of the other things that you sort of contend with in Ethiopia is kind of the political instability. Like there's been sort of wars here and there. So I think you were saying in Tigray and then Eritrea as well. So that's kind of been something you had to deal with in the last few years as well, on top of, you know, tough weather and all those sorts of things.
A war broke out in 2020, toward the end of 2020, and without going into too much details, pretty much was the federal government versus the North state government in Tigray, and the Eritreans were involved, and they were invited by the federal government. There was local militias. So the population of Tigray is estimated to be 6.5 million to 7. It was one of the worst wars we've witnessed possibly in our history. And by the UN, it was one of the worst war globally in the last 20 plus years. So over 1 million people lost their life. Over 120 women and girls, young girls, were raped. And I've lost family members that were murdered. And that's not unique. I think every Tigrayan.
Take a minute. Take a minute.
Sorry, guys. I think if you speak to any Tigrayan in Melbourne, everyone has lost a few members, either their immediate family. I mean, a whole family, 2 generations have been wiped out. And I know it hasn't been covered in Australia as much. And beside probably a few things on TV, but and it's devastating for the whole nation. It was a campaign that was well done by the federal government. It was brewing in 2019. We never thought, or I personally never thought it would reach to a war, but there was just a lot of hate campaign that was going for a while. And when the war broke out, I think everyone was beyond belief, but we never anticipated Eritrea being invited to invade our own nation and kill our own citizen. And that's what happened. And does that affect the coffee industry? To some extent it did. My parents are originally from Tigray, but we are based in the southwest. And Tigrayans throughout the nation were targeted and taken away and put away in what it seemed like a concentration camp. We were fortunate to bring my parents to Australia because they both have been here several times and they have an Australian passport. And so we were lucky. It was one less thing to worry about. But having said that, we lost harvest in 2020, 2021. It was just looted. And also a lot of men throughout the country were recruited to the military. So as you know, like I think 2020 and 2021, the quality of coffee wasn't as great because harvest wasn't done on time, and there was just not enough labor.
Fair enough, I would say as well. Yeah. And it's I don't know, I think in hearing everything you've just said, Daniel, it's like when we sort of prepared for this, I had no idea that that's what you'd say, but it's kind of like, it's a great thing in a way, learning this on the fly, because when you drink Ethiopian coffee, it's never something it's not often something we really reflect on, and shamefully it's in Western media. I don't think that's a issue that gets a lot of airtime. And not that any wars are sort of glossy or anything, but it's not one we hear about as much. So it's I guess coming off that, it's very raw, and thank you for sharing it with us. And I'm sorry to hear that your family's been through all that. Would be something I'd say.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's we've talked about it a few times, and that's the most I've learned about it from that side of thing. It is definitely something that we need to know more, especially in the if we're bringing it back to coffee world with the coffee podcast. It's something that we're all enjoying the fruits, of this country.
It's backbreaking work as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And how do you come out of it? How are you feeling now after losing 2 years of crops, did you say?
Yeah. I mean, it's compared to what people have lost, it means nothing really, to be honest. We're fortunate that, again, my parents were able to escape and be safe. Life goes on. Hopefully, there's an agreement of peace that been a year has gone by, and there's still quite a lot of issue in the north. There's there's war that we're not having conversation about, which is an Amhara region. It is far from the coffee growing areas, but again, the country is going through a lot of trouble, and not the best time.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of reflected because you're right. I think like Ethiopian coffee, and this isn't to throw anything at Ethiopia, but it's like it's different from what it was previous years. And like it's evident in kind of what you've said then. Sorry, I cut you off, Ron, before you were about to say that.
No, I was just going to say it's crazy when you hear like all the stuff that you've, gone through with the family, everything you're doing here. And then he's also a man that is just giving back to the community. Now, you've just recently worked on a pop-up for Meals with Impact. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about what they're doing, what you did, and what happened there?
Meals with Impact is a social enterprise, and they focus on women's migrant refugee background. It's work integrated training. So we collaborated. They were funded by the federal government and local government to do a pop-up in the CBD on Collins Street, technically Docklands. We collaborated. We went in as a coffee partner. And so the initial setup was to be kind of a community hub and training the women's on the site, and they make some incredible food, really diverse group of people. We had people from Iran, Afghanistan, Africa, Asia, India, all over really. And we were fortunate enough to involve, and from the beginning and from setting up the cafe, going through all the process. Initially, the idea was for the food to be takeaway only, and then a week in, we realised a lot of people wanted to sit in. They loved the space. So we had to quickly change the procedure into dining in, and we had about 50 sittings And we, as Ageyo, we took over the training of the front of house. Like, it was all about those women's incredible that have different qualification, different experience, and hospitality is part of their big part of their life, culturally. So, but it was more of about building their confidence, communication, and to see them going from, being super shy, not looking up to within like 3 weeks, we had massive progress. And it was amazing. It was,
Damn, you're a special man. That's beautiful. I love that. And I know the pop-up's over now, right?
The one thing I probably forgot to mention was within that period, we were donating $1 from every cup that we were selling from Ageyo, and we were able to raise enough fund to cover 20 kids from our village, and that covers the uniform and their school material for a whole year. And
Oh, amazing.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
Bravo. Now, is there anywhere people can go to still, take part in this or to help out?
Meals Impact is still operating on 747 Collins Street on the corner of Collins and Barman's Hill. Yes.
Yeah, so they can do that. And then I'm sure there's a website if you look that up.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
there's all kind of ways to give to them because it sounds like a great operation and something they should really help out with. So that's it, talking about how he's a good guy. Now let's talk about how he's a bad boy for life.
Bad guy. Wait, we spoke about this before the podcast. Remember that? Remember the discussion we had?
Yeah.
Rowan looks a bit sweaty.
Oh.
He looks very sweaty. He looks very hot.
It's time for an extra hot take with 2 sugars.
Oh! Okay, all right. Who's going first? Who gets the first extra hot take with 2 sugars? I think Dan.
Oh, no.
Oh, he's got to pass.
Okay, all right. Well, you're up
We're
first.
talking about how's a bad boy. Okay, we'll get to my extra hot take with 2 sugars. Let's bring it in here. So I'm just going to say cafes. There are too many milks.
Yes.
Too many milks. Now to be a cafe, you've got to be running with about 7 milks behind the bar. You're going to have like a regular milk, a skinny milk, a lactose-free milk. You're going to have soy, almond, oat. There's hemp now. There's peas. There's so
Breast
many
milk.
milks. There's breast milk behind the bars. There's too many milks. We need to simplify this. I know there are people who need different milks, but surely there's a way that we can simplify this offering and bring it in so that there's the dairy, the FODMAP one, and there's just maybe 3 milks max, because this leads to mistakes, ruined orders, slow work times. You're waiting 20 minutes for your coffee. Do you want to know why? Because you're drinking a half decaf double shot soy mochaccino with a splash of oat milk and then some hemp milk on top. Enough.
Yeah, no, I've had a gutful too, and that's probably your best extra hot take with 2 sugars.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, what's it like? You guys both running cafes. I haven't been running a cafe for a while. What's your experience with all the milks?
Well, I mean, you just roll with it. I mean, right. We've got 5 options available: full cream, skim, almond, soy, and oat. And that's not enough for some people, but it's more than enough for most. So we're managing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same here.
Yeah, same
Just
here.
a 5, yeah.
Who's up next with their hot take with 2 sugars?
Most cafes are closed on a public holiday, as you know. And I mean, I would love to award my stuff and trade, but when you're paying double and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
Double and a half.
It doesn't matter how much surcharge you're putting on that. It's just unoperable. It's way too expensive to run a cafe, and people want to be out. Whether it's tourism throughout the countryside or CBD, I think our government should step in. What do you think?
Oh, you mentioned a subsidy before, but
Subsidy.
that's a hot take still. We should hit the fucking button for that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's great. Like, I get it. You want to be able to pay like staff, but there are now owners running the business that are losing money on the public holidays just to do it. I'm sure that's not the case everywhere, but just there's got to be that balance. I want the staff to be paid, but
it's that strange thing because you've got the day off and everyone's entitled to a day off. It's a public holiday. And so you want to get compensated if you want to work, right?
Yeah.
But also, how do you want to enjoy that day? You know, if I've got a day off, I want to go out and spend it in the local economy.
Exactly.
It's like kind of disincentivizes business owners to even open because you're kind of just like contending with, can I stay ahead of the curve there? So,
exactly.
No, kill it.
Now, Kirk, it's time for your extra hot take.
Oh man, this is why I went last because I'm coming for somebody. I'm coming for a certain drink. I'm rolling the shots. Matcha. You suck.
Oh, come on.
Matcha, you're going down the toilet. I mean, it tastes, you know what?
Come on.
Who wants to drink a carpet latte, which is essentially what a matcha is? It's like a big pot, like, you know, once my brother, he bullied me, he put my face in the dirt, and that's how I know what matcha tasted like before. I was like, this reminded me of something. So I don't know if it's the trauma on my tongue or if it's the trauma coming back to me then. But matcha, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
This is blasphemy. Who's making the matchas for you?
No, like I've gone and tried some authentic matcha because I do like some matcha products at the cafe, and it's like, you know, you balance it out. It can be quite nice.
Yeah, because I believe that you have a product called
the world's famous matcha croissant.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a hypocrite. I know I'm a hypocrite. But you have that like the authentic matcha. I mean, we need to start handing out awards to people who drink that because that is like, it's an achievement. It's like, how much can you beat yourself up? It's. I mean,
I do have to say, I have to put a bit of honey into my matcha. But is that that bad?
You drink matcha?
Yeah, I mean, not regularly, but
not voluntarily.
Yeah, I enjoy it. If I'm in the right place, if the setting, if the mood hits.
It's kind of like that thing. If you're dating a girl and to impress her, you have to go through some of the things that she goes through. Matcha. Oh, do I have to?
Oh yeah.
Is it worth it?
I've actually never tasted it.
Whoa!
Oh. You're worse than Sydney Sweeney. Oh.
Mate, our guy's just going ham on the air horn over there.
That's extra hot from all of us.
Yeah, I love before the show, just so you know, guys, before the show, we went up to our sound guy and we were like, oh, we want some like sound effects. Maybe we'll do some jingles or that later. But just for today, could we just get an air horn for the extra hot take with 2 sugars? And he took that to mean just press it every second every second that he can. Okay. Yeah. Enough air horn. The air horn down.
No, but it's been good. Yeah! All right, I'll just have to get in the spirit of it there. Sorry, we're so stupid. But hey, been one hell of a podcast. I feel like that's been you nearly got me. Your story. That was incredibly raw, and it's not something that I think I'll ever forget. And it's I guess we all get to enjoy the coffee so much, but we don't often think about how it got here. Some of the things that the people endure producing it, and all the other issues that the country endures as well. So truly thank you for sharing that, and I think that's something we can all reflect on. And I think it's something when we round off the show, I want to remind people of to think of. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well,
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you again, and we wish you all the success with Ageyo and Little Ezida and the other things that you're doing as well. So, yeah.
Both here in Melbourne. If you're local in Melbourne, make sure to go check them out. Go say hello. Try out the goods. It's delicious. I've been there. It's amazing. I love it. The service, incredible. So I can see why you were teaching front of house hospitality there because you know it very well.
Very generous with your compliment. Thank you.
And what's you're glowing and beautiful. Do you have any tips for me?
Double espresso.
Oh, double espresso in the morning.
Yeah. All right. Well,
4 kids and a beautiful wife. Yeah.
Oh, he's a sweetheart as well.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you for dropping by. As always, it's just coffee. And we're going to get you in on this time, and we'll just say it all together on that one. As always, it's just coffee. Hey, thank you so much for coming by.
My pleasure. Thank you.
See that button? Bam. I think that'll do, Governor.
Yeah.